Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We have Jeff Pergolski here from Innovia Consulting, and he's going to be talking to us today about Business Central and NAV. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to type them into the questions box, and we will get them called out. And we do record all of our webinars, so this will be available on our website at innovia.com for you to review again, or if you want to share it with anyone, you are more than welcome. That will be available by the end of the week on our website. So now I will turn it over to Jeff, and we will begin our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. So today's presentation is around Dynamics 365 Business Central, and specifically, I guess, how that relates and considerations for existing NAV customers who are looking at Business Central. Obviously, Microsoft is super excited, has devoted a lot of resources, both technical, internal marketing wise. It is their application of the future, and so there's been a lot of information that has been coming out over the last couple months. That information flow is going to continue as this platform becomes even more popular and even more powerful. But what does that mean to someone who's currently using NAV? What does all this stuff mean? So another sort of point of housekeeping, I'm going to splash my dog on the screen. I'm privileged to have the flexibility of working from home. Sometimes that means things like my little dog Simone there starts to bark in the background. I will try to keep that at a minimum, but I like to disclose that as I get going. So some of the marketing slides around just how Microsoft is positioning Business Central. This wouldn't be all that different than the way that NAV has been positioned by Microsoft in the past in terms of the power of the system. Limitations. Do you have siloed systems? Are you duplicating data? All the inefficiency of manual processes and insufficient reporting, as well as a lack of control on security, that all gets addressed through Business Central. So again, this is still an all-in-one solution. It is a true ERP system, so all your data exists and is available in ways that maybe in previous versions of NAV it was not. So to start, I guess, how did we get to Business Central? So that as I'm talking to prospects and clients, there's a continual confusion depending on how long you've been paying attention to this. If you've had your blinders on and said that doesn't apply to me, I'm just going to, and you just started focusing on it, you probably have a much clearer view than someone who has been paying attention to this for the last 12 plus months. So how do we get to Business Central? Started at Tenerife way back when. Then actually Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2018 was released, the code base that Business Central is built upon. Then it was for a while referred to as Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Business Edition. Then it was relabeled Dynamics 365 for Financials, and ultimately became Business Central. So there are all kinds of Dynamics 365 products that are in the marketplace, and Business Central works with just about all of them. The one exception is Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations. That is essentially the AX version of the hosted environment. I don't understand a business case where you'd want both that and Business Central, but all of the other Dynamics 365 for sales, Dynamics 365 for service, for operations, not for operations, for talent, all of those things can be added and integrated into Business Central if you need that functionality. So keeping that in mind, from a roadmap perspective, this is what we are, that's sort of what I just reviewed. In terms of, you can see this slide shows the roadmap from cloud as well as on-premise. So, back in the NAV 2016 world, we didn't have a hosted NAV solution from Microsoft. We did have some hosted solutions, but they weren't provided from Microsoft. Spring 2018 is when Dynamics 365 Business Central was announced. Prior to that, there were all the previous versions that I covered. So the exciting point, fall 2018, which we are clearly on the cusp of, there has been this convergence of, there's going to be an October update that is coming for Business Central. At that time, Business Central and NAV 2018 R2 are going to be the exact same code base. So no longer is there going to be a differentiation in terms of functionality. There is, of course, the differentiation of how the application is provisioned, whether it is provisioned in a software as a service SaaS model, or provisioned on your own hardware in your own data center, or your remote data center somewhere else. That provisioning is still, Microsoft's still going to give you the flexibility, but the code base is going to be the same. So again, Business Central, the sort of the three pillars that Microsoft believes ERP is built on: the ability to connect your business, make smarter decisions, and then something that maybe has differentiated the product Business Central from Dynamics NAV would be the start and grow easily. Not that Microsoft believes that NAV would prevent you from starting and growing easily, but certainly the application Business Central has been built with the idea that customers could take this direct and maybe a little bit of help from their partner, get them up and running, get their data moved in, and start transacting in the system in a very short amount of time, as opposed to the setups involved with a typical NAV implementation of the past. So again, it's designed in a lot of ways to pick up from systems like QuickBooks that have limitations in terms of their connectivity, their proprietary database, how you can connect to these to your data, I should say, in these applications. They are designed to Business Central is really designed to leverage the cloud and make it a flexible environment for you to do what you need to do. In terms of connecting your business, you get the complete picture. Reports, whether it is Power BI that you're using, whether it's any of the numerous built-in reports, you've got the ability to, that's all just baked into the product. It's a couple clicks to enable, and you are off to the races. From a single comprehensive solution that does everything from supply chain management to even some marketing, project management through their jobs module. All of that is included in a really simplified interface. And again, importantly, the device is no longer important in terms of Business Central. So as long as you've got this enabled, of course, permissions and security are addressed in Business Central as they are in NAV, but this is truly an application that is written for any device. So there's a phone client, a tablet client, and a web client. Microsoft lists desktop. Certainly desktop is a possibility, but unlike NAV in the past, where in the different iterations of NAV over the years, they first introduced a tablet client, then a phone client, along with the web client. This application has been designed from the ground up to exist on any device. So you see here, it looks great. if you haven't had a chance to play around with it, definitely, I would say, evaluate it. A lot of NAV customers, I guess, because of the limitations of the application in the past, haven't thought about ways where having access to NAV on a mobile device or a tablet, or even through the web client, would be beneficial. Sometimes it's mentioned in scenarios where salespeople could benefit from, having pertinent customer information in their hands, obviously. But also within your organization, within your four walls, having were you not using NAV on the shipping docks, or because you didn't have, or maybe on the production floor where you've got a really toxic environment, difficult to keep IT hardware safe and functioning. Maybe now putting a tablet or even a low grade phone that allows people to in a weatherized case that would protect it, giving those people access to all of that valuable information on the production order, on BOMs, links that you've got set up on those production orders and BOMs that talk about recipes or diagnostic information, schematics of complicated, having the ability to park that in your ERP system and have that available to everyone is an important part of Business Central. Also, just like NAV has had in place for the past two versions, an Outlook client. So if your users prefer working in Outlook, mostly I would say on the sales and purchasing side, but if they're more comfortable working in Outlook, Business Central has that same Outlook client, if you will, that is linked to a web client, but essentially allows you to do everything you need to through Outlook. So that's still in place in Business Central, just as it is in NAV. And then the ability to automate and secure business processes, so you can improve productivity and get more done with easy to create workflows, audit trails, enterprise level security. Being able to connect workflows across sales and accounting to automatically track cash flow, secure purchasing, credit authorizations, vendor payment processes, via predefined alerts and approval workflows. That's all built into Business Central, just as it is in NAV. So again, a very powerful piece of software from that regard. And seeing things like, as this slide indicates, Microsoft Flow built into the product. So you start to get familiar with using those building block tools of creating flows. You don't necessarily have to know about the workflows that are built in. You could do everything using a tool like Microsoft Flow, and it works. It actually doesn't only work with this application of Business Central, but it's baked into the product. And again, making smarter decisions. This talks about accessing your data and building reports and visualizations in ways that are quick and painless. So certainly Business Central supports that. And then ultimately getting an end-to-end view of your business that is real time and secure and backed up. Those are all important and built into the product. Then being able to sell smarter and improve customer service, focusing on the right opportunities. Really some of the dashboards that you can configure with KPIs that are that means something to your organization, whatever that might be. It clearly beyond just who your top 5 customers are by sales, but really important metrics that you want to put in front of people. You've got the ability to do that, and it's never been as easy as it is in Business Central. So whether you're using Power BI or just the built-in reports, it is really easy. And ultimately, what we want to do is be able to guide employees to optimal outcomes. So whether it's using the business intelligence that's built into the product, or Power BI or Cortana's learning platform, where it's actually looking at your data because it exists on this on the Microsoft cloud and in a common data service database, being able to do stuff with that, to not just be able to report against it and look back to see what you've done, but to use that data to look forward and start to be, some limited forecasting tools built into the product, guiding your employees to understand from a sales perspective when should stuff be closing based on the way stuff closed in the past, when is the optimal time to reach out to customers, having access to all of that sales history in a single system, married with the intelligence of the Microsoft cloud. That's what Business Central is all about. And again, I mentioned the start and grow easily. That is something unique to Business Central, but being able to get this system, get your data into it quickly, and start using it rapidly has been a major force behind the creation of Business Central. Microsoft realized that the NAV projects of the past were not the way that people wanted to implement ERP, and so they've come up with Business Central as an option for organizations that may be less complicated, but still want all the enterprise-grade functionality that NAV gives our customers. And then ultimately, being able to tailor the application to, at some point, we are going to, if there's time at the end, I'm going to jump into Business Central and we'll kind of show that. This is showing the designing activity in Business Central. So being able to add fields, parts, charts, reports to the application, sort of along the way that you could customize the role center in NAV, but now there is no development granules, as we used to refer to them in the past. The licensing solution application builder and the ones that gave end users the ability to customize NAV, that no longer exists in Business Central. You have the ability to customize the application. Certainly there are some limitations to how you can customize the application because it is deployed on Microsoft's cloud. So it is a software as a service deployment, meaning you don't have access to the very building blocks of it, but you do have the ability to interact with it through events and extensions, and its customizations can still be made to it. It's just done differently. But you have even more power in terms of how you can tweak the application yourself and reports, etc., through the design tools that are built into it. And when you can't take it any further or take it to the point you need it in terms of functionality, there are now extensions in the App Source store that will now integrate with it. And so this is the App Store is going to be growing rapidly over the course of the next 12 months. This is where the add-ins, where you would in the past go to your partner and ask them for some help, like, hey, we need we want to accept credit cards and we want that to happen inside of NAV. You'd reach out to your partner might say, hey, we've worked with ChargeLogic and so we know they're a great ISV. Let's look at what's involved in getting this merged in their objects in your code base and talk about that was the old way of doing it. In terms of Business Central, you'll look in the App Store and say, hey, there already exists ChargeLogic payments in here. Let me click this link and find out a little bit more about it. Obviously, I'm sort of oversimplifying the process, but clicking and adding it yourself, not having to go through a partner to do that, and essentially installing it like an app on your phone. And that might seem overly simplistic, but if you think about it, Business Central being deployed on Amazon, probably made Satya Nadella, if he's listening, freak out, being deployed on Microsoft's cloud, not Amazon. They control the database, they control the code. So these these businesses who have written apps that you can download in AppSource, they've already done all the testing. They know it works. They know it's rock solid. So being able to click and install is only a couple mouse clicks and so a little bit of configuration information. So there, when you start to think about when we look at costs involved with Business Central and compared to NAV, these sorts of things obviously significantly less expensive. Now you may be paying in all of these apps that exist in AppSource are going to be purchased on a monthly basis, just like your Business Central subscription is going to be on a monthly basis. So you've got some recurring operating expenses there, but no longer do you have this huge implementation around adding functionality through an ISV to your environment. So that's an important differentiation between NAV and Business Central. And being ready for growth, the ability to add those apps as you see fit, maybe test them out, say, you know what, this didn't work as I expected. You're not out the thousands of dollars you may have paid for that ISV in the past. You just remove it from your subscription the next month, and it's as easy as that. So so that's sort of the application itself, an introduction to sort of what Business Central is, and now other considerations as it relates to NAV and to people who have NAV right now. And I think the most important thing to consider is the Microsoft Cloud. So Business Central, and we'll get into this at the very end, Business Central is going to be available on premise starting sometime after October of 2018. But for the most part, Business Central is going to be deployed on the cloud. And it's a cloud that you can trust. That is very important to Microsoft. Microsoft has been a leader in terms of the big tech companies like Google, Facebook, in terms of just privacy standards and practices that exist around cloud deployment. It's been, you can trust the Microsoft Cloud, and I think that's important because as you're talking about running all your data on someone else's computer in the cloud, that's an important. Trust is obviously important in that space, and Microsoft talks about the intelligent cloud, and essentially what they're talking about here is that the advantages. So the cloud is really all that means is someone else's computer. In most people's mind, that means out on the internet somewhere. So your data, as well as the application, is no longer going to be located within your four walls. It's somewhere else. So that could be the case. You could have it, you could have NAV deployed on a Rackspace server somewhere else, and typically you would have been running NAV in the cloud. The difference in terms of Microsoft and Business Central is that you are running on what they refer to as the intelligent cloud. So once your ERP application exists in the cloud, if you've got a Dynamics 365 account, you've got some Power BI available to you, you've got the Microsoft Office products, the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite, which gives you protection on your devices, and then cloud infrastructure. All of this stuff, all the way down to the Internet of Things here at the bottom of the screen, the Azure IoT suite. You get the ability to do so much more once your application exists on the Microsoft Cloud. So so what does this mean? This intelligent cloud and all of these applications, well, it's going to mean different things for different organizations and even different people within your organization. So starting to think about this, starting to think about, before it actually gets to the time where you're having to decide, oh, do we move to Business Central? Do we stay where we are? Do we not make any changes and resist and see what the what the market shakes out, and maybe give it a year? Um, those are all valid approaches. But even if you are resisting, I guess that's not the right word, but if you're going to wait and be cautious in this space, starting to think about how your organization could leverage some of the tools like Power BI or Microsoft Flow, that would be uh, really a really important part for your organization to consider. And I guess the other thing that we had to think about is, are we ready as a partner? Is your partner ready for this new reality? So, meaning, are you working with people who are familiar with the new tools that Microsoft has in place for you as the end user to use? Do you have a partner that's got people with expertise in those spaces, with Power BI, with Flow, with Azure, and so that you can take advantage of this stuff, so that you're being poked and prodded to sort of think about, hey, this is something that you could really do easily in Power BI, or you could set up a flow that would copy these tweets to a spreadsheet, so that you could send that to someone in your marketing department to follow up with these users. All kinds of cool things that that both your organization and your partner need to be ready for and need to be thinking about. So that is an important new reality that we all have to consider. In terms of just what Microsoft has done in that cloud space in terms of innovation at a global scale, just these numbers are hard to fathom, but I thought they were good to stare at for a minute. 14 billion plus Azure Active Directory authentication. So Microsoft's got more than 500 million users. Azure Active Directory is essentially outsourcing what used to be just your domain security policies. So once you start to use the Azure infrastructure, you start to copy over your username and passwords of your organization into the cloud on Microsoft's Azure authentication. And if there are 500 million users that are on Microsoft's Azure platform now, that are not just using it but actually authenticating through Azure Active Directory. So they're really using it. 4 to 5 Fortune 500 companies are using Office 365. Microsoft has spent over $15 billion on their cloud. They've got 100 data centers and over 1 million servers. So really just impressive numbers in terms of the scope and scale of what this application is, or what is behind this application. Obviously, Business Central is a small part of this, but as you see, Microsoft is going all in on the cloud. 4 years ago, when Satya Nadella became the CEO of Microsoft and said, we want to be cloud first and mobile first, this is sort of, this is what he was talking about. And obviously, he put his money where his mouth was. So again, Business Central, the core capabilities, it does everything that NAV does, from soup to nuts. It works on any device. And this is something important that that as it relates to Microsoft ERP, the cloud version is now the best version. Now there might be some developers who are coding in the existing and have a lot of expertise in the existing space that might argue this point and say that they like the tools of the old version better. But from a functionality standpoint, Microsoft has shared with us the cloud version is getting this stuff first. So the cloud version of Business Central is going to be released before the on-premise version of Business Central. They're both based on the same code base, but Microsoft is leading with the cloud, and now the on-premise application is going to follow. That is the exact opposite of what we have been, what our current reality has been. So, so let that just sink in for a minute. So it's going to be that in the same way that if you were on an old version of NAV, if you're running on premise, you're going to be slightly behind the curve compared to the Business Central users. So took me a minute to get on board with that, but and I guess that sort of transitions into just the total cost of ownership discussion when you look at cloud versus on-premise. And this one, I guess I just wanted to bring up because as an existing NAV customer, I'm going to just assume because most of our clients running NAV are running the application on servers within their data center. What that means is not just the the flexibility of what you are able to do with the application because it exists on premise. There's also a lot of responsibility with maintaining your ERP application. So you've got the software and licensing costs. Obviously, the thing that jumps out there is your annual enhancement, but then the hardware, the IT expertise that you either have to have on staff or outsourced, maintenance, training, the ongoing costs of stuff like just the air conditioning required to keep your server room cool. All of that stuff exists sort of below the surface in this iceberg representation that those are all things that aren't often considered in terms of the total cost of ownership when you compare cloud to on-premise. Typically, that discussion involves just the licensing costs. There's a lot of other stuff involved, and it varies greatly from organization to organization, so I didn't even want to try to guess at numbers. But when you're comparing a SaaS provisioned application like Business Central, cloud computing, you've got the subscription fees and whatever the implementation is, and customization is something that you can do, but you're going to have that same customization if you're doing it on premise. So really, it's not always just an apples to apples comparison when you're only looking at the subscription fees compared to software licensing costs. You've got the apps versus ISV. So, again, substantial difference, and in most cases, a substantial cost difference in terms of how you're going to buy those ISVs that extend the functionality of the application. And as long as we're talking about pricing, this is the this is the pricing of Business Central. So starting on the far right, $100 per user per month. That is Business Central Premium, and what that gives you is everything that Essentials does, including in addition service management, manufacturing, and supply planning. So stuff like the planning worksheet you wouldn't see in Business Central. Essentials, because that is the full manufacturing. So essentially, if you're using the application for manufacturing, you will need to be premium users. If you're using it for mostly for financials, fixed assets, you still want workflow and you're going to do distribution and maybe assembly orders, the Essentials version will work for you. Just to be clear, you've got you have to be, as an organization, either all Essentials or all Premium. You cannot have a mix of these SKUs like, oh, we only have 3 production people. This is a differentiator. So if you need manufacturing functionality in the application, you are going to have everyone be on the Premium user account. And then this team members user, for $8 a month, sort of the equivalent of the limited user in the NAV world. you've got the ability to read and approve, run all reports and provision. So essentially you can consume all the data that you want. You just can't post transactions. So very similar to the limited, but only $8 a month. So it used to be that that people would steer away from maybe getting their sales team access to NAV because of the licensing expense. A NAV license of full user license of $3,000, or even the limited user at $600. That's a lot to spend when a lot of times the salespeople were working in Outlook and looking at whatever their CRM system was, assuming it wasn't Microsoft Dynamics 365 for sales. They were interacting with ERP, but indirectly. Now for $8 a month, you can give them access to all of the data in their ERP solution, and there's a lot of positive stuff that is that comes along with giving sales access to that. That's a different webinar, but again, to consider that. So the other thing that's important is if you are an existing NAV, a Dynamics NAV, or actually any of the Dynamics products, so GP, AX as well, and you're current on maintenance, you can sign up for Business Central and get a 40% discount on any of these fees, and that 40% discount will be granted to you for the first 2 years. So I mean that's pretty substantial, and I've just done like a really basic comparison here, but to look at the licensing cost comparison right now, let's say you are a company with 10 NAV users, and you're thinking about like how would my Business Central compare to this. So if we look at the licensing costs on 10 NAV users, you would have got the starter pack and extended pack, and then 7 additional users. 3 are built into the starter pack. So you've got a total software value of $36,000. Paying 16% maintenance on that every year, you're paying $5,800 of maintenance. How does that compare to Business Central? So Business Central, you'd have 10 premium users. At $100 a month, that's going to be $1,000 per month times 12 months. So you've got $12,000 of subscription licensing. For the first 2 years, you're getting a 40% discount, so that takes it down $4,800. So now you're paying $7,200. So at the point, if you do decide to switch to Business Central, you'd be paying $7,200 a year for the first 2 years for it, compared to $5,800. So $1,400 difference. The good thing is that your maintenance goes away, but your subscription costs are higher. Again, not just paying more is never exciting, but then also I guess we're sort of ignoring the payment of the initial software purchase. So to be maybe a more fair comparison, you'd want to at least factor that in. So let's say that you spread that out over 7 years, and you're going to add $5,000 to the $5,800 that you're paying in maintenance. You're at about $11,000 when you look at the initial software purchase, compared to $12,000 of Business Central. Ignoring essentially and then again, remember that previous slide, this $11,000 compared to the $12,000, all the stuff about backing up your data and buying licensing outside of the NAV licensing, but stuff like SQL and Microsoft Windows Server operating system licensing with client access licenses, server CALs, buying backup, figuring on edge protection for this server if you're going to open it up to the outside. All of those things add thousands of dollars per year. We know it does. Like, it's not always easy for non-technical people to quantify that, but ultimately, if you spend the time, I would venture a guess that the other associated costs with your ERP licensing would almost double the just the maintenance payment. You start to add on the technical expertise you need to either outsource or hire on staff. You're going to be talking about substantially more, and this $12,000 is going to be a lot less. And essentially, that's why this application exists. I mean, Microsoft didn't think, oh, how can we, how can we make things tricky for our existing ERP customers? They wanted to reflect what is happening in the rest of the industry. People don't want to have huge capital expenditures for licensing and hardware to run an application when they could just use a subscription model. So that sort of gives you a nuts and bolts comparison on the financials of transacting on those two different products. The October 2018 release, there's going to be some new functionality. One of the things I think that's most important there that's cool is the fact that you've got a hybrid deployment, and that hybrid deployment is going to mean that you can run Business Central on premise, and then just synchronize it to the intelligent cloud of Microsoft, and then there's going to be different cloud readiness states. So if everything is in place and you haven't changed any custom code, you're going to be able to fail over to the cloud if you need it. If you've got some customizations that you've written and they're outside of the code base that Microsoft has approved, meaning it's your own customization and it's not written in events and extensions, you're going to have to think about, or I shouldn't say think about, you're going to not be able to fail over in a hybrid deployment, which is okay. I mean, as long as that's not part of your disaster planning for your organization. But so while Business Central is a cloud-first service, customers who need to run their workloads on premises or on the intelligent edge connected to the cloud can do so. That's not been something that we've had the ability to do with NAV. With Business Central, once customers sign up for the service in the cloud, they have the option to deploy it locally on their choice of hardware. While they're running Business Central on their own hardware, they have a tenant in the cloud, and the data from the customer's hardware will be replicated to the cloud for intelligent cloud scenarios. At all times, customers are informed of their cloud-ready status. So when they're ready to transition completely to the cloud, it's a simple step. That's the stoplight indicators of green, yellow, and red on this slide. The customer data is always uploaded to the cloud from on-premise. Customers can opt out if desired, of course, but to bring the intelligent cloud capabilities to the Business Central deployments on the intelligent edge. So Microsoft Business Central will be licensed through CSP at the same price, regardless of where the customer through a partner deploys their solution. Partners are still able to customize on-premises solutions through code customization. However, when they do that, they'll receive warnings that their solution has become disconnected from the cloud. That is, their path to the cloud is disconnected until they refactor the legacy customizations and add-ons into an extension. Upon doing so, Business Central will let them know they are again connected to the cloud and the intelligent edge. So Microsoft will continue to support on-premises code customizations. However, it's highly recommended that partners refactor apps. I'm saying partners, of course, end user organizations with development expertise. It applies to you as well. Microsoft highly recommends those to refactor apps and customizations into extensions, which is the new programming language and code base that Business Central runs on, so that you can benefit from continuous updates in the intelligent cloud. So, that's really interesting. The hybrid deployment option. Business Central everywhere. So this is just a note I grabbed. So since Dynamic NAV and Business Central share the same code base, the transition for customers from NAV to Business Central is as seamless as just another Dynamics NAV upgrade. That's kind of a joke to anyone who's been through that, because I don't know that anyone would call a NAV upgrade seamless. We've got some that have been really, really close. Our delivery staff is amazing, but again, it's a little more than an oil change. This is Microsoft's Intelligent Edge. One thing I wanted to alert everyone to, the refreshed desktop experience. So consider this in Business Central. Business Central runs remotely. It runs in a browser. So the ability to have multiple windows and to leverage that hasn't exactly been figured out yet. You can obviously open multiple windows within the application, but you're stuck in a single browser window. So when Microsoft here has a refreshed desktop experience, in the past, that meant the desktop application was a Windows client. Now that that desktop experience is a browser window, and you know, if you're used to using multiple monitors, you're going to have to do some things differently. So so that's important. And then I think the most important question, can you upgrade from NAV to Business Central? So, you know, you're on NAV right now and you're thinking this is a Microsoft product, Business Central is a Microsoft product. Maybe your version of NAV is really old and you're on 3.6 or 4.0 or something, or 2009. Maybe you're running on 2016 or 2017 and you want to get to Business Central. You know, can you upgrade? Can you just push your data in there? No. So as of this point, there is no direct path to upgrade from NAV to Business Central. Of course, all the tools for migrating data and pushing data into Business Central are available to you and to us as a partner. But in the case of moving from NAV to Business Central, in terms of the language we use, we would say that's a re-implementation. I've heard that Microsoft is working on this, so they're looking for a path to get from NAV to Business Central, but right now that path doesn't exist, and that's important for you to understand what that means, and that's a whole another webinar. But I know Angie has told me that we've got some questions, so this ends my slide deck here. Angie, if you would like to share with me any of the questions that you have, and I will attempt to answer those.
Yes, we have several. So the first question is, there are a lot of things in NAV now that aren't in Business Central's current form. Does it get everything in the October release?
Okay, so I'd need some specifics as to whether there are reports or functionality. From a functionality standpoint, I know some of the manufacturing functionality was lacking in the initial version of Business Central. The spring release added some of that back. According to Microsoft, the code base is going to be exactly the same in Business Central and NAV 2018 R2. So everything that is in NAV is going to be in Business Central.
Okay, thank you. How much access to extension codes do we have as a business? I'm guessing none for the add-on store, but what about customizations that an ISV might help us with? Do we have access to and modify rights to that code?
I believe the answer to that is no. You don't have access. The process. So being able to tweak code, like if you're running on Business Central and Microsoft SaaS platform, that's their code. You can write an extension, a completely customized extension yourself, and then essentially the way to interact with it, if you're going to be running on Microsoft's cloud, is to write that customization from scratch and then submit it to the app source as if you were going to make that available to others, and have Microsoft check the code and then put it in there. But you can do whatever you want from a development perspective in terms of creating your own customized extensions, but access to either the ISV's code or Microsoft's code, you are correct, you don't have any access to that. I would say that if asking about access to an ISV code, that would be between you and the ISV. I do not know what the answer is there.
Okay, next question. How good is the conversation, how good is the conversion from the development environment to the event extension model?
Hmm. I am not a good resource to answer that. I could certainly get so it is a major, major conversion. What we call, what we refer to as the process of refactoring code is, we have, I think, depending on the customizations that exist, we've had budget numbers for projects where we've done this that go from an hour or two of changing a customization into an extension to hundreds of hours. So that would be taken on a case-by-case basis, and I would work with your partner to help quantify the amount of effort and time involved in doing that switchover.
Okay, thank you. Wizards exist for migrating QuickBooks to Business Central, but not from NAV to Business Central. Is that coming?
Yeah, and that's sort of the Michael Scott picture here. Yeah, like, in my opinion, Microsoft should have started there and made it easy for their existing customers. They obviously saw an opportunity with QuickBooks conversion. We believe that there is going to be that functionality coming, but at this point it's all rumor, and I have no. You do have all of the tools though, so like the rapid start tools that are available through Business Central. Assuming it's a SQL database that you're on. So moving that data should be even easier in NAV, but there still is no built-in tool to Business Central application that allows you to move it from NAV.
Okay, and are we paying licensing costs to a VAR or Microsoft?
The transaction through their CSP model, you would be transacting through a VAR. There wouldn't, there's the pricing is all going to be universal across, but Microsoft is gone from I guess the NAV partner to the CSP, the cloud solution provider, so that your subscription would still be provisioned and managed through a CSP partner. And so I guess the question would be, you'd still be going through a VAR. Ideally, your VAR would have it set up as we do at Innovia, so that you can, if you need to add a license, you just go to a portal, click it. You don't even really need to interact with your partner to adjust your licensing and subscriptions, but you still will need to go through a CSP at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you for giving us all the information on those questions. If anyone has any further questions, please don't hesitate to get those into the questions box.
Oh, if I could just, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is, if you are interested in a demo of Business Central, a trial essentially, if you've got an Office 365 account, you can have your whoever is your CSP, and you can have multiple CSPs, but you can have a 25 user Business Central environment provision for you for 30 days for free through your CSP. You can also go to like dynamics.microsoft.com and click through the links and go through, and Microsoft will provision an essentials version of the of Business Central for you. If you want a premium version, I believe that's only available through CSPs, but Innovia can do that. Your current existing partner, if they are a CSP with Microsoft, they could do that and give you a 25 user environment to play around with. That it's really super easy to do, and it doesn't cost you anything. So I would, it only lasts for 30 days, so I would recommend you time that appropriately for your organization to do some, to have time and capacity to evaluate it. But if you're interested, reach out to a CSP and they can get you that, especially for people who are looking for the manufacturing the premium version of the product, reach out to your CSP and get a trial. All right, so that's all I had. Looks like we've got 5 minutes left here of our hour.
All right, I believe that's all the questions. If anyone has any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact us and we'll get those answered for you. We do have one more question coming through. I'll give it just a moment here to go through. We were told when we implemented NAV a year ago that this would be the last major upgrade we'd need to go through. It doesn't appear that that was correct.
Yeah, well, so depending on, yes, the idea of an upgrade from 2018 to or if you're on 2016 now, I'm not sure if that was the version that you're on. The idea of switching the code base to events and extensions has meant that to be able to take advantage of everything that this new world of Business Central is providing, switching over the codes to events and extensions is a major change. So from that standpoint, it would not be an accurate statement for to say that it was the last major upgrade. If you are going from the version you're on now to 2018 and you're not going to touch the refactoring because you're not going to do anything to future proof, it is substantially easier, and to the magnitude of what used to take 700 to 1,000 hours is now done in 100 to 150 hours, so substantially less in terms of effort. But if you want to go to events and extensions, which is where the application is moving to, that was not on our radar a couple years ago. So from that standpoint, it would be an inaccurate statement.
Okay. Well, thank you again for answering all the questions. For those of you that have asked, we will reach out to you just to make sure that we've covered all of your questions, and if you have any further issues that you want to discuss with us, Jeff or someone from our team would be more than happy to discuss those with you and your company. If that's okay, Jeff.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
All right, well, thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I hope you got a lot of helpful tips out of what Jeff has explained about Business Central and NAV. And I just want to remind you that we do have more events coming up, so check out our events page at innovia.com. We have one more for this month that will be tomorrow, and that is going to be from FastPath. They will be discussing best practices for setting up audit trails in Dynamics NAV. And then we'll pick back up after the Labor Day holiday with ExperLogic, and they'll be discussing on how to shorten your quote to cash cycle with CPQ. So if you're interested in attending any of our webinars, please register for those at innovia.com. And we look forward to seeing you on one of our future webinars. Have a great day, everyone, and enjoy your holiday.
All right. Thanks, Angie. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.